Now that we have our data entered in, we're going to concentrate on entering formulas and functions here on out through the rest of the unit. Well, I want to talk about that. Obviously, Excel is very valuable because we can assign a formula to a cell, and then obviously Excel is going to calculate that result for us automatically. That's one reason why I want to go over these with you to make your life a little bit easier. And there's two ways we're going to talk about. One obvious way is the keyboard, and another one is a point mode. But before we can go into that, we need to determine formulas and functions that we want to use. So utilize proper algebraic notation. So think back to your math classes because you need a solid understanding of these operators, and then also the order of operations is going to be vital. That means very important to writing sound formulas, formulas that work. Use the fill handle and copy and paste operations to copy formulas. I think we touched base on this a little bit maybe in Unit 1, or some of you might have figured out how to do this, but we're going to go in more detail here in just a little bit. Obviously, when we copy and paste, this is going to minimize errors. It's going to save us time. We don't have to keep retyping similar formulas over and over and over again. Okay, the last thing we need to make sure is be careful about using invalid and circular cell references. And circular cell references is going to be an important term that you need to know. These are going to be displayed as that number sign and then capital REF with the exclamation point. That's going to say you have an error message in the cell. Not all of the numeric signs. Remember, if you see that, that just means you need to make your column width wider so your information can show up. Invalid means Excel does not understand a cell reference. So we'll talk about that in more detail again as we go through our practice exercise. I want to talk about circular reference in a little bit more detail. Formula in a cell that contains a reference back to itself. Okay? And I'm going to go over this in just a minute with you so you understand, because that seems a little confusing probably at first when you see that or hear that. So most cases there are result in incorrect formulas. So Excel's going to warn you when a circular reference has been created. It can be direct or indirect, and you need to know the difference between these two for the test. Direct is placing a formula. So equals A1 in cell A1. So we're saying that the formula is going to equal A1, and that's going to be in cell A1. So notice that it says formulas in a cell that contains a reference back to itself. Well, you can't have A1 equaling A1 because we don't have any numbers there. And this will make more sense probably as we go through it. Indirect, this is going to be a formula in a cell that refers to another cell or cells that include a formula that refers back to the original cell. Next, we're going to talk about built-in functions. So whenever possible, we want to use these built-in functions. Excel includes pre-written formulas called functions to help you compute a range of value and statistics. So why not take advantage of them? It takes a value or values, performs an operation, and returns a result to a cell. That is what a function does. Using them is going to reduce possibility of errors like I've talked about before. It's going to simplify the formula used in a cell, and it's going to result in improved readability, which, remember, that's our ultimate goal, is we want this to be easy, readable for the user. Arguments, these are going to be defined as values that you use within a function. So when we start using these terms, arguments, we know that those are the values within the function. All functions, okay, are going to begin with an equal sign. If you do not use the equal sign, it will not recognize it as a function. Okay, so it's going to begin with an equal sign, and arguments are in parentheses after the function name. So in the example that I've given you, this is the average function. So we start with the equal sign, then it's going to say average because that's the function we're going to use. Remember, before we used the sum function in Unit 1 and it said sum. In the parentheses, we have cell 4 through cell 12 in column C. So that would be an example of a built-in function that we're going to use. Every time we enter the value into a cell, Excel is going to automatically recalculate all the formulas. So say that we change the numbers in C5, okay? That's going to change the average automatically. You don't have to go back in and re-enter the formulas. All right, now for the practice exercise specifically, these are going to be formulas that you're going to be using. Okay, so you may pause the video for a second. You may write these down if that's easier for some of you to recognize these. Some of you may already know these formulas, but this is going to be how you enter a formula in using the keyboard. Okay, we're going to talk about point mode method in just a minute. But let's go over them real quick. Gross pay is going to be column F in our practice exercise. This is going to equals hours worked times hourly pay rate. Then we've got federal tax rate, which is column G. It's going to be 0.22 times, in parentheses, obviously gross pay minus dependents times 24.32. State tax is column H. This is going to be equal to 0.04 times the gross pay. Net pay is in column I. This is going to equal gross pay minus the sum of federal tax and state tax together. And then we have tax percentage, which is column J. And this is going to be the sum of federal tax and state tax divided by gross pay. All right, arithmetic operations. So we need to know what the operators are, the meaning. I'm going to show you an example in this table, and then the meaning of like how you would read it. Okay, so you may want to pause again for a moment and write these operators down so you know what to use. The negative sign is a negation, so it's going to show a negative number, negative 78. That's how we would read it. Okay, percentage sign, that's going to, like, say we have equals 23%, so this is going to multiply 23 times 0.01. Notice this is a lot of basic math that's coming into play here, but what this is going to do is save you time from writing these or keying these over and over and over again. Then we have exponentation. I always say that word wrong. Don't make fun of me. Equals 3, and then we have the little symbol 4. This raises 3 to the 4th power. We have multiplication, which is the tiny little star. So in our example, this multiplies the contents of the cell C5 by 61.5. Then we've got our division, which is the backslash. In our example here, it divides the contents in H3 by the contents in H11. And then obviously addition and subtraction, those are pretty obvious ones there. Order of operations. So just in case you forgot the order of operations, this is how it's going to read in Excel. So when you use more than one operation involved in a formula, Excel is going to follow the same basic order operations that you would when you're doing a math problem. So moving left to right, the order of operations is going to be as follows. It's going to be the negation, then it's going to follow the percentages, then the exponentations, then multiplications and division, and then addition and subtraction. So if you want to override that order, say that you wanted the addition and subtraction to happen first before it actually did multiplication, then you would have to use parentheses to override that order of operation. And we'll use this more in our next video. Now, this one here, we're talking about point mode. And once we get involved in our practice exercise, this will make a little bit more sense, but you may want to pause right now and go ahead and write these down. Notice that in the point mode, we're giving specific cell numbers right now. So federal tax is cell G4. And remember our formula from earlier. Now, the OR in each of these is going to show you how the formula is going to look when you start pointing and typing and clicking. Okay? So I'm not going to read over each one of these. This is kind of a review from what you had earlier. You just need to copy down the OR part, and then you should be ready to go. Point mode is going to allow you to select cells for use in a formula by using the mouse, this method is going to be faster and more accurate. So I'm going to show you both here in just a few seconds in the practice exercise, and then you can decide what's easiest for you to use.